mud was ruining Lady Georgiana Radcliffe's silk slippers, and she did not care in the slightest. Rain lashed against the canopy of the woods, turning the twilight into a grey, watery blur. Behind her, Reverend Theodore Markham was practically hyperventilating as he scrambled over a fallen log. "Georgiana, please!" Theo's voice was a mix of prayer and panic. "If your father finds out we are this far past the boundary, he won't just be angry. He will banish me to a parish in the Hebrides. I hate the Hebrides. It's damp." "Stop whining, Theo," Georgiana shouted back, hitching her expensive skirts higher. "I told you, I saw smoke. Smoke means a fire. Fire means a person." "Exactly. A person. A poacher. A murderer." Theo caught up to her, grabbing her elbow gently. "We should turn back. We can send the gamekeeper in the morning. By morning, whoever it is could be dead of cold." She shook him off, her eyes blazing with a stubbornness Theo had known since they were children. "I'm going in." She reached the mouth of the cave. The Devil's Drop. The smell hit her instantly. Wet wool, old wood smoke, and something metallic. Blood? "Hello." Her voice trembled, just once. She stepped into the gloom. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the cave in a stark white burst. A man was crouched in the far corner, pressed against the stone. He was terrifying. His clothes were shredded remnants of a military coat. His hair was wild and matted. He held a jagged rock in one hand, knuckles white, ready to strike. Georgiana froze. Beside her, Theo let out a strangled squeak and tried to step in front of her. "Georgiana, get back," the man snarled, a low, animalistic sound. "Stay back. I will not be taken." "No one is taking you anywhere," Georgiana said, her voice surprisingly steady. She pushed Theo's protective arm down. "You're hurt." "I'm armed." "You're holding a rock," she corrected softly. "And I'm holding a basket of cheese. I think I have the advantage." The man blinked. The ferocity wavered, replaced by a confusion so profound it made her chest ache. He lowered the rock an inch. He stepped into the sliver of light. Despite the thick beard and the layers of grime, his nose was straight and aristocratic, his brow strong. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Striking light blue, piercing. They were not the eyes of a madman. They were the eyes of a king who had lost his kingdom, staring out from a face of dirt. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice ruined and raspy. He pressed a hand to his temple. "The noise. Stop the noise. I am Georgiana." She took a step closer. "Do you have a name?" The man looked down at his own torn hands. I don't know." The admission was a broken thing. "I don't remember." "He's mad," Theo whispered urgently in her ear. "Georgiana, he's a deserter or a lunatic. We have to go, now." "We can't leave him, Theo. Look at him." The stranger looked up. He wasn't looking at Theo. He was looking at her. Those electric blue eyes locked onto hers with a desperate intensity. In the silence of the storm, a current passed between them, a tether snapping into place. "Help me," the man breathed. It wasn't a demand. It was a prayer. Georgiana made her decision in a heartbeat. The kind of decision that changes a life forever. "We aren't telling anyone," she said firmly. She turned to Theo. "Theo, give me your flask." Georgiana, that is medicinal brandy for—" "Give it to me." Theo sighed, the sound of a man accepting his fate, and handed over the silver flask. Georgiana stepped forward and placed the basket and the flask on a rock, halfway between them. "Eat," she commanded the stranger gentle. "Drink, we will come back tomorrow." The man stared at the flask, then at her. He didn't move toward the food yet. He just watched her, his blue eyes burning in the dark. "Why?" he rasped. "Because it is raining," she said simply. "And I suspect you have been cold for a very long time." She turned and grabbed Theo's arm, marching them out into the rain before her courage could fail. "You realize," Theo hissed as they scrambled back up the ridge, "that we are now harboring a vagrant. This is treason, or at least highly improper." "He's not a vagrant, Theo." Georgiana whispered, looking back at the dark mouth of the cave. "Did you see his eyes?" "I saw a man who needs a bath and a magistrate." "I saw a man who is lost," she corrected, "and we are going to find him." Georgiana didn't just bring bread the next day. She brought a crime. Wrapped inside her silk handkerchief was her father's silver shaving kit, stolen from the Marquess's dressing room. She scrambled into the cave, breathless, to find the wild man pacing the small space like a caged tiger. "You came back," he rasped, stopping mid-stride. "I promised." She set the bundle down on a flat rock. "And I brought help, but first, if you are to hide in my woods, you cannot look like a beast." He stared at the silver razor, the soap, and the small mirror. He reached out, his hand shaking slightly, and picked up the razor. His grip adjusted instantly, fingers curling around the handle with a practiced, elegant ease that a common vagrant would never possess. "I know this weight," he whispered. I remember this." "Then show me," Georgiana challenged softly. "Let us see who you are." He turned away toward the dim light of the cave mouth. The scrape of steel against skin filled the silence, a rhythmic, intimate sound. Georgiana watched his back, the muscles tense beneath the tattered coat. When he finally turned back, the air left her lungs. The savage was gone. In his place stood a man of devastating symmetry. With the beard gone, his jawline was smooth and sharp, cutting a striking silhouette against the shadows. He had raked his auburn hair back with wet fingers into a deep side part that seemed entirely natural to him. But it was his eyes, striking light blue, that pinned her to the wall. Without the grime, they were intelligent, piercing, and dangerously attractive. "Well?" he asked, a ghost of a smirk touching his lips. "Is it an improvement?" Georgiana swallowed, her wit failing her. "You have the face of a gentleman," she whispered, "and the hands of a soldier." "I don't know if that's a compliment," he said, stepping closer. The cave suddenly felt very small. The scent of soap and rain filled the air. "Georgiana!" A twig snapped loudly outside. Sebastian's reaction was instantaneous. He didn't cower. He moved in front of Georgiana, shielding her body with his own, his posture shifting from confused amnesiac to lethal protector. "Stay behind me," he ordered. The voice was pure command. "Peace!" a voice hissed from the bushes. "Put the rock down, man. I come in peace." Reverend Theodore Markham stepped into the clearing, looking pale and clutching a bundle of clothes like a shield. He looked at Georgiana, then at the tall, imposing stranger guarding her. "Theo," Georgiana breathed, stepping out from behind Sebastian. "It's all right. He's safe." Theo looked at Sebastian, really looked at him, and his eyes widened. He took in the sharp features, the proud stance, the impeccable hair, even in the wild. "Safe," Theo whispered, walking forward. "Georgiana, look at him. That is not a vagrant. That is a man who costs money." "He doesn't remember who he is, Theo." "I remember that I don't like being stared at," Sebastian said coldly. His accent was clipped, aristocratic. "Who are you?" "I'm Theodore Markham," Theo said, straightening his spine. "I am Lady Georgiana's oldest friend, and I'm the only reason the gamekeepers aren't sweeping this ravine right now." Theo threw the bundle of clothes to Sebastian. "Put these on. My father's old riding clothes. They'll fit broad shoulders." Sebastian caught the bundle with one hand. Reflexive, fast. "Why are you helping me?" "Because she asked me to," Theo said, gesturing helplessly to Georgiana. "And because if my father finds out his daughter is nursing a strange man in a cave, he will exile her to a convent in Cornwall. So, for God's sake, keep your head down." Sebastian looked at the clothes, then at Georgiana. The suspicion in his blue eyes melted into something else. Gratitude? Or something deeper? "I will not be the cause of her ruin," Sebastian said quietly. "You already are," Theo muttered, checking his pocket watch nervously. "Georgiana, we must go. The dinner bell rings in 20 minutes. If you are late, your mother will ask questions." Georgiana nodded. She turned to leave, but Sebastian caught her wrist. It was a light touch, but electric. "Thank you," he said. His thumb brushed the pulse point of her wrist. "For the razor, for the dignity." "It wasn't dignity," she breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It was curiosity." "Come on, Georgiana," Theo hissed from the tree line. She pulled away and ran after Theo, but as she crested the hill, she looked back. Sebastian was standing at the mouth of the cave, wearing the borrowed riding coat. He didn't look like a man hiding in the dirt. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, surveying the land as if he owned it, as if he were the master of Ashbourne and they were the guests. "Theo," Georgiana whispered as they hurried toward the horses. "Did you see how he stood?" "I saw," Theo said grimly. "And that is what frightens me. A peasant forgets his name and stays a peasant. A gentleman forgets his name and becomes a problem." For 3 months, Georgiana lived in the heartbeat between the shadows. She learned to lie with a steady voice, smiling at her mother over tea while her boots were still damp with the scent of the forest. The first month was defined by silence and stews. She began bringing heavy iron pots hidden beneath blankets in her saddlebags. She watched him eat, at first with the desperation of a starving man, and then with a growing, quiet dignity. He was no longer just a ghost. He was becoming a man with auburn hair that caught the stray beams of sunlight and eyes so blue they felt like a physical weight against her skin. By the second month, the cave had been transformed. She brought down thick wool blankets, a small tinderbox, and old books from her father's library. One late afternoon, as the first frost began to bite, she sat on a flat stone near him while he looked at a book of poetry. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and the copper scent of the coming winter. "Why do you stay so long?" he asked, his voice now clear, no longer the raspy growl of the cave. "The sun is dipping. You should be heading back to the house." "I'd rather be here, in the cold, than in a room full of people who don't truly see me," Georgiana whispered. He looked up from the book. His sharp features were illuminated by the dying light. For a long second, neither of them moved. The chemistry between them was a wire pulled taut, vibrating with every breath. During a sudden afternoon downpour, a violent storm cracked open the sky just as she was preparing to leave. The rain came down in a white sheet, turning the forest floor into a river of silt. Georgiana slipped on a mossy root at the mouth of the cave, her feet sliding toward the steep drop down the embankment. Sebastian didn't think. He lunged, his powerful hand catching her waist, pulling her back into the safety of the stone walls. The momentum threw them together. She was pressed hard against his chest, her hands clutching his rough wool coat. His breath was warm against her forehead. The silence of the cave was suddenly deafening, filled only with the sound of their combined heartbeats and the roar of the rain just inches away. He didn't let go. His fingers tightened on her waist, and he looked down at her with a raw, brutal honesty. "Georgiana," he breathed. It was the first time he had used her name. She leaned up, driven by a hunger she didn't know she possessed. The kiss was accidental at first, a collision of teeth and desperation, but it deepened instantly. It tasted of salt and rain, 3 months of bottled-up longing. When they pulled apart, the world felt shifted. The cave wasn't a prison anymore. It was theirs. She managed to get back to the house just as the first dinner bell rang, her heart racing faster than her horse. By the 3rd month, the shift was complete. He was no longer a beggar she was nursing. He was a man who looked at her as if she were the only light in the universe, and she was a woman who was beginning to realize that bread was no longer enough to save him. The first thing Georgiana noticed was how easily secrecy learned her name. She adjusted without drama. She altered her rides by minutes. She spoke more at the dinner table, not less. She allowed her mother to believe the season had simply turned her thoughtful. In the woods, Sebastian was changing too. One afternoon he handed her a scrap of paper, his fingers stained with charcoal. "What is this?" she asked. "A map," he said. "Of the land as I understand it." She studied it. The angles were perfect. The topography was sketched with a surveyor's eye or a commander's. "You've never seen the estate records?" she whispered, looking up at him. "No." He rubbed the charcoal from his thumb, his brow furrowed in frustration. "But when I look at the land, I see the lines. I know where the drainage should go. I know where the perimeter is weak. That is not the instinct of a vagrant, Sebastian." "No," he agreed, his voice tight. "It is the instinct of a soldier, a man who had to survive." That night, Georgiana sat awake long after Ashbourne House settled. She looked at the ceiling, her heart aching. The man in the cave was healing. He was strong, capable, and intelligent. He wasn't a stray bird she could nurse and release. He was a man, and she could no longer pretend that bringing him bread was enough. Winter was coming. If she left him there, the cold would take him. If she brought him home as a stranger, her father would cast him out. She didn't care about his past. She didn't care that he had no name, no money, and no memory. She only knew that the thought of a life without him felt like a room with no air. 2 days later, she made her choice. She met Theo in the rectory garden, away from the servants. "I'm going to marry him," she said. Theo froze. He looked at her with the weary resignation of a man who had seen this coming for months. "At St. Jude's, my father will see the banns." "No banns," Georgiana said. "Tonight, in the dark." Theo closed his eyes. "Georgiana, do you understand what you're doing? You are the daughter of a marquess. He is a man with nothing, no name, no coin, no past." "I don't marry his past, Theo," she said softly. "I marry him, the man he is right now." Theo sighed. "If you are caught—" "If I am caught, I am ruined," she finished. "But if I leave him, I am lost. I choose ruin." The midnight wedding. It was midnight when Georgiana slipped out of Ashbourne House. The estate was silent, the moon obscured by heavy clouds. She wore a dark cloak over her simplest grey dress, the hood pulled low to hide her face. She met Sebastian at the edge of the woods. He was waiting in the shadows. He wore the coat Theo had given him, buttoned high to his throat. He had washed in the river despite the cold. His auburn hair was wet and combed back into a deep side part, his sharp jaw set with grim determination. They walked to the village in silence, sticking to the hedgerows like fugitives. St. Jude's Church loomed ahead, dark and silent, but the side door was unlatched. They slipped inside. The church was pitch black save for a single lantern Theo had placed on the floor behind the altar rail, its shutter pulled low. The shadows stretched long and distorted against the stone walls. Theo stood in his vestments, looking pale and terrified. Every creak of the old wood made him jump. "Quickly," Theo whispered, his voice echoing too loudly in the emptiness. "The sexton wakes at 5. Georgiana and Sebastian knelt at the altar rail. The stone was freezing through her dress. "We are stealing a sacrament," Sebastian whispered, looking at the dark cross above them. "We are claiming one," Georgiana corrected, taking his hand. Theo opened his prayer book, squinting in the dim light. He skipped the sermon. He went straight to the vows. "Do you, Sebastian," Theo whispered, "take this woman to be your wedded wife, to live together after God's ordinance in the holy estate of matrimony?" Sebastian looked at Georgiana. In the shadows, his blue eyes were the only bright thing in the room. He didn't look like a duke. He looked like a man who couldn't believe his luck and who was terrified of breaking it. "I do," he said. His voice was low, deep and steady, the voice of a man making a pact against the world. "And do you, Georgiana?" "I do." "The ring?" Theo asked, glancing nervously at the dark windows. Sebastian froze. His hand went to his pocket and found nothing. A flash of devastation crossed his face, the poverty of his reality crashing down on him. "I have nothing," he rasped, shame coloring his tone. "I have no gold. I have no house. I cannot even bind you to me." Georgiana didn't hesitate. She pulled her glove off her left hand. She reached for the gold chain around her neck and unclasped her grandmother's simple gold band. "You give me yourself," she whispered, pressing the ring into his palm. "That is all I require." Sebastian stared at the gold in his rough hand. He looked at her with an intensity that burned. "With this ring," he vowed, his voice cracking with emotion, "I thee wed, with my body I thee worship, and with all my worldly goods. I have none, Georgiana, but what I am is yours." He slid the ring onto her finger. It was done. "I pronounce you," Theo whispered, closing the book quickly and blowing out the lantern. Man and wife. The church plunged into darkness, but the silence wasn't fearful anymore. It was settled. "Come," Theo said, his voice no longer hissing with panic, but steady with purpose. "My carriage is round the back." They slipped out into the cold night air. The carriage was waiting, the horses stamping softly on the damp earth. Theo turned to Georgiana, his expression pained. "I have handled your absence," Theo said, wringing his hands slightly. "I told your mother that my sister Charlotte has taken a sudden turn, a fever, and begged for your company until Monday." Georgiana blinked. "Charlotte is in Bath." "I know she is in Bath," Theo hissed, looking up at the cloudy sky. "I know it, you know it, and God certainly knows it." He squeezed his eyes shut, lifting his face to the heavens. "Forgive me, Lord," he muttered theatrically, crossing himself. "I have borne false witness. I have lied to a marchioness. I'm a shepherd leading his flock into deceit." He opened one eye to look at them. "But I did it. The lie is told. They do not expect you back for 3 days. Sebastian didn't look confused. He didn't ask questions. He understood the strategy instantly. The sharp intelligence in his blue eyes flared as he looked at Theo. "You bought us a weekend," Sebastian said, his voice low and appreciative. "You risked your soul for my wife's reputation." "My soul is already in a precarious position thanks to you two," Theo grumbled, opening the carriage door. "Get in, before the lightning strikes me down." They rode to the rectory beneath a darkening sky. It was a short journey, but for the first time, they weren't hiding in the dirt. They were sitting in a carriage, Sebastian's hand gripping hers. He watched the passing trees with the alert, calculating gaze of a man who knew exactly where he was going and what it cost to get there. Theo prepared the rooms without fuss. He lit the fire in the guest suite, closed the heavy velvet curtains, and secured the privacy. He stood at the door, looking at the two of them. "I will see you in the morning," Theo said simply. He paused, looking at the ceiling, "Assuming I'm not smited in my sleep." The door closed. The lock clicked. The sound settled something final. Sebastian stood by the fireplace, guarding the threshold. The firelight danced over his auburn hair, illuminating the aristocratic lines of his face. He looked out of place in the elegant room. Yet simultaneously, he looked as if he had always belonged in one. He turned to her. "You're safe here," he said. "I know." Still, he did not touch her. He stepped closer and stopped, close enough that she felt his heat before his hands ever reached her. "I have lived without memory," he said quietly, "without a name, without a place in the world. But I know this." His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to refuse. She did not. "I will never take what is not freely given." Her breath deepened, steady and sure. "I did not marry you to be careful forever," she said. That was when his composure shifted. Not broken, not lost, but softened. He cupped her face with both hands, reverent as though committing her to memory in case the world tried to steal him again. "My wife," he said, the word no longer a test, but a truth. "If this night is all I am ever given, it will be enough." She answered him by stepping closer. The kiss was not hurried, not desperate. It was deliberate. A claiming made tender by restraint, deepened by the knowledge that nothing stood between them now, no law, no fear, no unfinished truth. Later, when the lamp had been lowered and the world reduced to breath and warmth and shared quiet, she rested her head against his shoulder and felt him exhale, long, steady, as though he had finally come home to himself. Morning came gently. By daylight, nothing had been undone. Everything had been sealed. They remained at Theo's house through the weekend. It was quiet, safe, briefly whole. They ate at a table. They sat by the fire reading. They existed as if they were simply Mr. and Mrs. Wentworth. But on the third day, the reality of their world returned. Sebastian stood by the library window, watching the leaves blow across the lawn. He wasn't relaxing. He was strategizing. "I cannot stay," he said. Theo, who was nursing a cup of tea and a guilty conscience, looked up. "Sebastian, be reasonable. The house is empty. No one knows." "I will not live as a man kept by kindness," Sebastian said. He turned, his posture rigid. "I am her husband, Theo. I meant to provide protection, not hide behind it." "You are surviving," Georgiana said softly, coming to his side. "Surviving is for the cave," he said, looking down at her with intense pride. "I am done surviving. Now I must build something worthy of you." He looked at Theo. "Thank you for the sanctuary. And for the lie. Don't remind me," Theo muttered into his tea. Against counsel, Sebastian returned to the woods. Georgiana returned to Ashbourne House before her parents came home. The lamps were lit. The servants were orderly. The world was unchanged. Only she was not. She walked up the stairs, stripping off her gloves. She unclasped the chain from her neck, threaded her wedding ring onto it, and hid it beneath her bodice, against her heart. Sebastian did not come to the house. He would not. That was his choice. Their marriage now lived in restraint, in timing, and in knowledge that could not be unlearned. And somewhere beyond the estate, the sky was already gathering itself for the storm that would force the truth into daylight. The storm was worsening. Georgiana stood alone at the drawing-room window. The rain battered the glass, but the house held firm. Lamps were lit. Servants moved quietly through the corridors. Earlier that afternoon, her parents had returned from Europe. Her father was in his study. Sebastian was not there. That was the problem. Only days earlier, Georgiana had returned from Reverend Markham's house exactly as planned. Alone, unremarkable. No questions asked. No suspicions raised. She was married now, and no one in this house knew it. Sebastian had gone back to the cave. Not because she wanted it, because he would not stay where he felt kept. Now, as the wind howled against the stone, the unfairness of it pressed hard. "That is my husband," she thought, "and I am not with him." She could not go to him. Her allowance could not protect him. Her marriage, hidden, had no authority. Footsteps sounded behind her. A maid stopped, looking apologetic. She held out a folded note. "My lady, this was left earlier, from the rectory." Georgiana opened it at once. Theo's handwriting was hasty. The storm turned dangerous faster than expected. "I would not allow him to refuse. He is with me now. He is safe for the night." Georgiana closed her eyes, once. Safe. For tonight. But tomorrow was still unguarded. She folded the note and turned away from the window. The house no longer felt like protection. It felt like delay. She walked down the corridor toward her father's study. The floorboards did not creak beneath her feet, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Light spilled from beneath the door. Her hand lifted to the brass handle. Inside, her father's voice spoke calmly. "Come in." Georgiana stopped. Because once she crossed that threshold, nothing would be hidden again, and nothing would return to what it had been before. She entered. Her father did not look up at once. Papers lay spread across his desk. Correspondence, accounts, the ordinary instruments of authority. The fire burned low. The room smelled faintly of leather and ink. "Close the door," the Marquis said. She did. He lifted his gaze then, assessing her with the practiced calm of a man accustomed to weighing risk. "You wish to speak," he said. It sounded urgent. "It is." She did not sit. That alone shifted the room. Her father noticed. He leaned back slightly. Yes, he prompted. Georgiana drew one steady breath. Not to compose herself, she already was, but to claim the moment. She reached into her bodice, pulled out the gold chain, and let the ring drop against her dress. I am married. The silence that followed was not shocked. It was calculating. Her father leaned back slightly. You misspoke. I did not. His eyes sharpened. To whom? To a man you do not know. That earned her his full attention. Her father set his pen down carefully. Explain. I will, she said, but I will not apologize. A pause. Then, proceed. We were married quietly, lawfully, by Reverend Markham. Her father's jaw tightened. Theo? Yes. You understand, the Marquis said slowly, that this is not merely improper. I do. It is dangerous. I know. And you chose it anyway? Yes. He stood. The Marquis of Radcliffe was not a loud man. His power had never required it. He crossed the room and stopped a careful distance from her. Who is he? He asked. I do not know his name, she said. That landed. Her father stared at her as though recalibrating the ground beneath his feet. You married a man without a name. I married a man without memory, she corrected. There is a difference. There is not, he said flatly. There is, she replied. And you taught me that. That surprised him. She continued before he could interrupt. He is educated, disciplined. He carries responsibility as habit, not performance. He was broken by war, not made small by it. Her father's expression did not soften. Where is he now? With Theo, she said. For tonight. The storm made the woods impossible. You hid him, her father interrupted. Yes. You hid a man in this county, he said, and brought a clergyman into it. Yes. Do you understand what you have done to this family? Yes. Her voice did not waver. I also understand what I have done for my husband. That word, husband, struck with finality. Her father turned away, facing the fire. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, does your mother know? No. She must. I will tell her, Georgiana said, after you have heard everything. He considered that. Continue. He lived in a cave because he would not be kept, she said, her voice soft but fierce. Because he would not live as charity, because pride remained when memory did not. Her father turned back to her slowly. And you found this acceptable? I found it honest. The Marquis exhaled through his nose. You married a man you could not present, could not place, could not protect. I married a man I could stand beside, Georgiana said. The rest is power, and that belongs to you. That was the truth of it. Her father recognized it. You want me to legitimize this, he said. I want you to see him, she replied, and then decide. Another silence. At last, he nodded once. Very well, he said. He will be brought here. Tomorrow. Relief did not touch her face. On one condition, he added. She waited. If this man brings scandal, the Marquis said, you will accept the consequences without complaint. I already have, she said. He studied her, searching for uncertainty. There was none. Leave me, he said. She inclined her head and turned for the door. Georgiana. She stopped. You understand, he said, that this may end badly. Yes, she replied, but it will end honestly. She left the study. Behind her, the Marquis of Radcliffe stood alone with a truth that could not be put back into the dark. And somewhere beyond the walls of Ashbourne House, the storm raged on, unaware that by morning the world would demand to know who the man in the shadows really was. The morning after the storm, the drawing room felt like a courtroom. Georgiana stood in the center of the rug. Sebastian stood beside her, wearing the suit Theo had provided. He was clean-shaven, his auburn hair combed back. He didn't look like a beggar. He stood with a military stillness that filled the room. The Marquis paced by the fireplace, his face a mask of cold fury. Lady Edith sat on the sofa, pale and trembling, clutching her handkerchief. He has no papers, the Marquis spat, tossing a letter onto the desk. I sent a runner to the regiment records at dawn. They confirm a unit was lost in the Crimea, but without a name he is nothing. A ghost. He turned on Sebastian. You have ruined her. I have married her, Sebastian corrected. His voice was deep, calm, and resonant. It wasn't the voice of a nervous commoner. It was the voice of a man who expected to be listened to. The Marquis paused, squinting at him. For a second, the authority in Sebastian's tone confused him. It didn't fit the clothes. You have married her, the Marquis mocked. And what will you live on? Heir, you have no title, no land, no income. He turned to Georgiana. You're dead to me, he said simply. Pack your things. You leave this house within the hour. Georgiana drew a breath, her hand finding Sebastian's. She had expected this, but Lady Edith stood up. No, Vincent. The Marquis spun around. Edith? You cannot throw them onto the street, Lady Edith said, her voice shaking but her logic sharp. Think, if you cast her out, the world will ask why. They will ask where Georgiana is. Rumors will start. People will dig. She stepped forward, her eyes hard. If they find out she married a vagrant, a man with no history, we are all destroyed. The scandal will touch us. It will touch the cousins. It will never end. The Marquis stopped. He looked at his wife, then at the window, weighing the cost of his pride against the cost of his reputation. She is right, he muttered finally. We cannot let the truth survive. He looked at Sebastian with calculating eyes. We will lie, the Marquis decided. If anyone asks, you are a distant relation of a noble house, a minor branch. He waved a hand vaguely. From Sussex. Yes, we will say you are of the Sussex line. Respectable enough to marry, insignificant enough that no one knows you. Georgiana squeezed Sebastian's hand. The irony was suffocating. Sussex. If only he knew. And where do we live? Georgiana asked quietly. If I am dead to you, I cannot sleep under this roof. You won't, the Marquis said. You will go to the garden cottage, on the north edge. The gamekeeper's lodge, Lady Edith whispered. Vincent, it has been empty for years. It is a roof, the Marquis snapped. It is on the estate, so the lie holds, but it is far enough away that I do not have to see him. He walked up to Sebastian. He stopped inches from his face, trying to intimidate him. You will live there quietly. You will not attend the winter balls. You will not come to the main house unless summoned. You are invisible. Do you understand? Sebastian didn't blink. He looked the Marquis in the eye, and for a moment, the two men looked like equals. I do not require your balls, my lord, Sebastian said coolly, and I do not require your approval. I require only a roof for my wife. The Marquis stepped back, unsettled again by the arrogance in the man's eyes. A beggar should be grateful. This man was merely patient. Get them out of my sight, the Marquis ordered. Winter settled over the north edge. The cottage was draughty. The roof leaked in the corner. The wind howled through the gaps in the stone. And yet, for Georgiana, it was the warmest winter of her life. They built a world out of nothing. Sebastian was not idle. The man who had commanded a regiment now commanded a garden spade and a hammer. He fixed the roof, climbing the slate tiles with a grace that made Georgiana hold her breath. He cleared the briars. He hunted in the woods, bringing back rabbit and pheasant so they wouldn't have to ask the main house for meat. He was proud, he was capable, and he was hers. Inside, the cottage changed. Georgiana learned to cook. Badly at first, burning the porridge, laughing until her sides ached while Sebastian ate it without complaint. She learned to mend his coat. She learned that a Marquess's daughter could scrub a floor and feel more dignity in the dirt than she ever felt in a ballroom. One evening, deep in December, Sebastian sat by the fire, whittling a piece of oak. You are happy, he said. It wasn't a question. He sounded surprised. Georgiana looked up from her mending. I am. We have no money, Georgiana. The wind is rattling the door. You are wearing a dress that is 3 seasons old. I have never slept better, she answered honestly. He stopped whittling. He looked at her with that intense, piercing blue gaze. I feel, he tapped his temple. I feel as though I am waking up. The noise in my head is gone, but there is still a hole where my name should be. Does it matter? She asked, moving to sit on the rug beside him. We have a name. You are my husband. He dropped the wood and cupped her face. His thumb traced her lip. I am afraid, he whispered, that one day I will remember who I was, and he will not be a man who deserves you. Then we will leave him in the past, she vowed, and we will keep this. She didn't know then. She didn't know that the past was already riding up the lane to find them. 2 days later, a carriage from the main house appeared on the track. The footman didn't look at Sebastian. He handed a sealed envelope to Georgiana. From his lordship. Georgiana broke the seal. Her hands trembled. The rumors have started. People are asking why you have vanished. We must validate the lie. We travel to Sussex on Friday. The Duke of Montfort's estate is hosting the winter ball. It is the largest gathering of the season. You will attend. You will present your husband as Mr. Sebastian Thorne. Do not fail me. Georgiana lowered the letter. The blood drained from her face. What is it? Sebastian asked. My father, she whispered. We are summoned to Sussex. Sebastian froze. Sussex. The word hit him like a physical blow. He blinked, swaying slightly on his feet. A flash of something, white cliffs, the smell of salt, the sound of seagulls, ripped through his mind. Sebastian! Georgiana grabbed his arm. Are you all right? He shook his head, clearing the fog. The image was gone as quickly as it came. Yes, he rasped. Just a headache. We have to go, she said, her voice hollow. To a ball, to prove you exist. Sebastian straightened. He looked at the muddy track, then back at his wife. The soldier returned. Then we will go, he said grimly. We will play their game, Georgiana. I will wear their silk and drink their wine, and then I will bring you back home. Friday came. They dressed in the main house, in silence. The Marquess had provided clothes. For Sebastian, a formal evening suit, black tailcoat, crisp white shirt, a silk cravat. When he stepped out of the dressing room, Georgiana stopped breathing. He didn't look like a distant cousin. He didn't look like a soldier. He looked like a king. The suit fit him as if he had been born in it. He adjusted his cuffs with an unconscious, practiced familiarity. He checked his pocket watch. He stood tall, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Even the Marquis, waiting in the hall, paused for a fraction of a second. At least he looks the part, the Marquis muttered. Try not to open your mouth, sir. Let the clothes do the lying. Sebastian didn't answer. He offered his arm to Georgiana. Shall we? He asked. She took his arm. It was rock solid. They climbed into the carriage. The door slammed shut. The horses lurched forward. As they rolled away from Ashbourne House, heading south toward the coast, toward Sussex, Sebastian stared out the window. His eyes were distant. His fingers drummed a rhythm on his knee. A rhythm he didn't recognize, but his body remembered. Tap, 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 tap. Georgiana watched him, a cold knot of dread forming in her stomach. They were driving into the lion's den, and she had no idea that the man sitting beside her was about to wake up. Home. The air changed first. As the carriage crossed the border into Sussex, the smell of damp earth was replaced by the sharp, stinging scent of salt. Georgiana watched Sebastian. He hadn't spoken for an hour. He was staring out the window, his brow furrowed, his hand gripping the velvet armrest so tight his knuckles were white. Sebastian, she whispered. He didn't look at her. The road curves here, he murmured. It was barely audible. What? The road, he said, his eyes unfocused. It curves left around the old oak, then the gates. Georgiana frowned. She looked out the window. A moment later, the carriage swung hard to the left, circling an ancient, lightning-struck oak tree. A chill went down Georgiana's spine. You have been here before, she asked. He blinked, turning to her. The fog in his eyes cleared, replaced by confusion. I don't know. I must have. He rubbed his temple. It feels like a dream I had a long time ago. The carriage slowed. Ahead of them, massive iron gates loomed out of the mist. They were topped with stone griffins, their wings spread in challenge. Sebastian didn't shrink from them. He critiqued them. "The west hinge is rusting," he muttered. "I told Henderson to oil it." "Who is Henderson?" Sebastian froze. He looked at her, and genuine fear flashed across his face. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know who that is." The carriage rolled through the gates and up the long gravel drive. And then the house appeared. Montfort Hall. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress of pale stone rising from the cliffs like a natural formation. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. The Marquess leaned forward in his seat, looking pleased. "Impressive, is it not?" he said, eyeing Sebastian. "Try not to look too overwhelmed, Mr. Thorne. Remember, you are supposed to be a gentleman, not a tourist." Sebastian didn't answer. He was staring at the house with an expression Georgiana couldn't place. It wasn't awe, it was recognition. The carriage stopped. Footmen in blue livery rushed to open the doors. The Marquis stepped out first, then Georgiana, then Sebastian. He stepped onto the gravel. He didn't look around nervously. He stood with his feet apart, his shoulders squared, taking a deep breath of the sea air. He looked up at the facade of the house. His eyes scanned the windows. "The nursery curtains are drawn," he said softly. Georgiana took his arm. She was trembling. "Sebastian, please, just stay close to me." They walked up the wide stone steps. The double doors were thrown open. A line of servants stood in the grand foyer to welcome the guests. At the head of the line stood an elderly man with silver hair and a posture like a steel rod. The butler. The Marquess of Radcliffe strode in, handing his hat to a footman. "Good evening," the Marquess said loudly. "I am Lord Radcliffe. This is my daughter, Lady Georgiana, and this," he gestured to Sebastian, who was stepping through the door, "is her husband, Mr. Sebastian Thorne." The butler bowed low. "My lord. My lady." Then he straightened to greet the husband. The butler's eyes met Sebastian's. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. The butler's face went grey. The silver tray in the hands of the footman behind him rattled. Sebastian stared at the old man. A headache spiked behind his eyes. Blind, white-hot pain. Henderson. The name screamed in his mind. The Marquess frowned, noticing the servant's paralysis. "Is there a problem, man?" The butler didn't answer the Marquess. He couldn't take his eyes off Sebastian. His lips trembled. He took a step forward, breaking all protocol. "Sir?" the butler whispered. Sebastian couldn't breathe. The foyer was spinning, the black and white marble floor, the scent of beeswax, the ticking of the grandfather clock. It was all crashing into him. Sebastian started, his voice rough. "Henderson!" A sharp female voice rang out from the top of the stairs. Everyone looked up. A woman stood on the landing. She was older, dressed in mourning black, diamonds glittering at her throat. She had the same auburn hair as Sebastian, the same striking blue eyes. The Dowager Duchess. "What is this delay?" she demanded, descending the stairs. "The guests are freezing in the doorway." She reached the bottom of the stairs. "Lord Radcliffe," she said, forcing a smile. "Welcome." "Your Grace?" The Marquis bowed. "Allow me to introduce my daughter's husband, Mr. Sebastian Thorne." The Dowager Duchess turned her gaze to Sebastian. She stopped. Her hand flew to her throat. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. "No," she whispered. The Marquess looked between them, confused. "Your Grace." She didn't hear him. She walked toward Sebastian as if in a trance. She stopped inches from him. Her hand reached out, shaking violently to touch his face. Sebastian didn't pull away. He couldn't. He looked at the woman, and the wall in his mind shattered. The cave was gone. The cottage was gone. "Mother," he breathed. The Dowager Duchess let out a sob that echoed off the stone walls. "William!" she cried, collapsing into his arms. "My William!" Georgiana stood frozen, her hand slipping from Sebastian's arm. "William!" His name wasn't Sebastian. The Marquis of Radcliffe stepped back, his face a mask of horror. The lie was dead, and the Duke of Montfort had just come home. The foyer was silent, save for the weeping of a duchess. Georgiana stood frozen. Her hand was still reaching out, suspended in the air where Sebastian's arm had been a moment ago. But he wasn't there. He was enveloped in his mother's arms. Servants were rushing forward. Faces she didn't know, crying names she didn't recognize. "William," the Dowager sobbed, holding his face. "We thought you were dead. The regiment sent word. They said there was no body." William, stood like a statue. His eyes were wide, darting around the grand hall. The memories were not trickling back. They were crashing in like a tidal wave. The chandelier above. He broke that crystal when he was 10. The painting on the wall, his grandfather, the smell of lilies, his mother's perfume. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had chopped wood in the snow, the hands that had held Georgiana in the dark. They were shaking. "I remember," he whispered. His voice sounded different here. It echoed off the marble. "I remember the ship, the blast." "You are home," his mother cried. "You are safe." To the side, the Marquis of Radcliffe made a sound like he was choking. He had turned a sickly shade of white. He looked at the man he had called a beggar, the man he had banished to a gamekeeper's lodge, the man he had forced to enter through the servant's entrance in his mind. He was the Duke of Montfort, one of the wealthiest men in England, a war hero, a peer far above the Marquis in rank. "Your Grace," the Marquis stammered. He actually took a step back, bowing his head. We had no idea. The injury, the lack of papers." William didn't look at him. He looked over his mother's shoulder. He looked for Georgiana. She was standing near the door, small and pale in her old dress. She looked terrified. She wasn't looking at her husband. She was looking at a stranger. "Georgiana," he said. But before she could answer, the Dowager Duchess pulled back, her eyes fierce with protection. "Doctors," she commanded the butler. "Get the physician immediately. He is pale. He is shaking. Henderson, help him to the drawing room. He must sit." "Mother, I'm fine," William tried to say. "You are not fine," she cried. "You have been gone for 2 years. You are back from the grave." She signaled to the footmen. "Help him." The crowd of servants surged around him, a wall of blue livery and concern. They ushered him toward the double doors of the drawing room. William tried to turn back. "Georgiana." But she didn't move. She couldn't. She watched the heavy doors close behind him, and just like that, he was gone. The silence returned to the foyer. The Marquis exhaled, pulling a handkerchief to wipe his sweating brow. He turned to Georgiana, his eyes wide with panic and a dawning, greedy realization. "A duke," he whispered. "Good God, Georgiana, you married the Duke of Montfort." He let out a short, hysterical laugh. "I thought you had ruined us. But you brilliant girl, you have secured the greatest match in the kingdom." He straightened his coat, his arrogance returning instantly. "We must go in. We must be at his side. We are family now." He reached for her arm. Georgiana stepped back. "No," she said. The Marquis frowned. "What?" "He is not the man I married," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The man I married needed me. The man I married was happy in a cottage with a leaking roof." She looked at the closed doors. "That man is gone." "Don't be sentimental," her father snapped. "That man was a fantasy. This is reality, and reality is a title, Georgiana. Now come." "No." She turned toward the heavy front doors. The exit. "Where are you going?" her father hissed. "You cannot leave. You are the Duchess." "I am going to the garden," she said, her voice breaking. "I need air. Do not follow me." She pushed open the heavy doors and stumbled out into the cold sea air. She didn't run to the carriage. She ran to the edge of the terrace, overlooking the dark, churning ocean. She gripped the stone railing. The salt spray hit her face, mixing with the tears she hadn't let fall inside. She remembered his words by the fire. "I'm afraid that one day I will remember who I was, and he will not be a man who deserves you." She closed her eyes. He was wrong. She wasn't afraid he wouldn't deserve her. She was afraid that the Duke of Montfort would not want the woman who loved the beggar, Georgiana. The voice came from behind her. She froze. She didn't turn around. She couldn't bear to see him in this setting, standing on his terrace, owning the world. "Go back inside, Your Grace," she whispered. "Your mother is waiting." Footsteps crunched on the gravel. Heavy, deliberate. "My mother is safe," he said. "My wife is not." He stopped beside her. He rested his hands on the stone railing, mirroring her. He was still wearing the suit her father had bought him, but he had torn off the silk cravat. His collar was open to the wind. He looked at the ocean. "I remember everything," he said quietly. "I remember growing up here. I remember the war. I remember the explosion." Georgiana gripped the stone tighter until her knuckles ached. "Then you know who you are," she said. "You are the Duke." He turned to face her. "I know who I was," he corrected. "I was a man who had everything and valued nothing. I was arrogant. I was bored. I was hollow." He reached out and covered her hand with his. His palm was warm, rough, real. "But the man who woke up in a cave," he said. "The man who learned to build a fire. The man who fell in love with a woman who had mud on her hem and defiance in her eyes." He stepped closer, forcing her to look at him. His blue eyes were clear. The shadows were gone, but the love was exactly the same. "That is the man I choose to be, Georgiana. The title is just a word. The estate is just stone. But you," he brought her hand to his lips, "you are the only thing that is real." Georgiana let out a sob she had been holding for hours. "I thought I lost you," she wept. "I thought Sebastian was gone." "Sebastian is right here," he promised, pulling her into his arms. "He just goes by William now." He kissed her then. Not a polite, aristocratic peck. A deep, searing kiss that tasted of salt and desperation and home. The terrace doors opened. "Your Grace." The Marquess of Radcliffe hurried out, looking flustered. "The physicians are ready, and we really must discuss the arrangements. The scandal. How to present this to the press." William broke the kiss. He didn't let go of Georgiana. He turned to look at his father-in-law. The confusion was gone. The soldier was gone. The Duke had arrived. "Lord Radcliffe," William said. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "Yes, Your Grace?" "You banished my wife to a gamekeeper's lodge," William said. "You called me a beggar. You told your own daughter she was dead to you." The Marquess paled, wringing his hands. It was a misunderstanding. I was protecting the family name. I had no idea of your rank." "That is the point," William interrupted gently. He stepped forward, his eyes locking onto the older man's. "You treated me with contempt when you thought I was nothing, and now you treat me with respect because you know I am a duke." The Marquess fell silent, shame creeping up his neck. "True nobility is not found in a title, my lord," William said. "It is found in how you treat those who can do nothing for you." William looked down at Georgiana, squeezing her hand. "Your daughter knew that. She loved the beggar. You only love the Duke." The Marquess looked down at the gravel, defeated. I have no defense, Your Grace. I will leave at once." "No," William said. The Marquess looked up, surprised. "We will not banish you as you banished us," William said. "That is not how this house will operate." He stood tall, the wind catching his coat. "You are welcome here, Lord Radcliffe. But let this be a lesson. From this day forward, we do not value people for what they own. We value them for who they are. If you can abide by that, then you have a place at our table." The Marquess stared at him, really stared at him, for the first time. He saw not a title, but a man far greater than himself. He bowed low, not out of protocol, but out of genuine humility. "Thank you, William," the Marquis whispered. "I will try to learn." He turned and walked quietly back inside, leaving them to the wind and the sea. William turned back to Georgiana. The sternness vanished from his eyes, replaced by a soft, weary smile. "Do you want to go inside?" he asked gently. "It is warm. There are fires." Georgiana looked at the massive, intimidating fortress of Montfort Hall. Then she looked at her husband. "Is there a gamekeeper's lodge?" she asked with a small smile. William laughed, a rich, deep sound that carried over the wind. "There is," he said, "and the roof probably leaks." "Perfect," she said. He lifted her hand to his lips one last time. "Then let's go home. They say the Duke of Montfort is a good man. He restored the estate. He treated his tenants with a fairness that baffled the other lords of the county. He invited his father-in-law to dinners, though the old Marquis was always quiet, always respectful, always learning. The Dowager thanked Georgiana for saving her son, and Georgiana thanked the Dowager for her son. Theo was contacted and was told to visit, and that a room will always be there for him on the estate. But the servants whispered about the nights the Duke and Duchess disappeared. On those nights they wouldn't sleep in the Grand Master suite with the silk canopies. They wouldn't ring for the maids. They would take a lantern and walk hand in hand down the gravel path to the old gamekeeper's lodge at the edge of the cliffs. It was there, away from the titles and the gold, that they found their peace. Inside the small stone walls, William wasn't a duke who had to lead a county. He was just a man who knew how to whittle wood and keep a fire burning. And Georgiana wasn't a duchess who had to mind her manners. She was the woman who had saved him. One night, a year later, the storm returned. Rain battered the slate roof of the lodge. The wind howled off the ocean, shaking the window panes. Georgiana sat on the rug by the fire, reading. William sat beside her, polishing a piece of driftwood, his movements slow and rhythmic. He stopped and looked at her. The firelight caught the auburn in his hair and the sharp angle of his jaw. He looked exactly like the man she had found in the cave, except the haunted look in his blue eyes was gone. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. He smiled. It was a small, private smile that the world never got to see. "I was thinking about the cave," he said. "Do you miss it?" "No," he said. He reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her wedding ring. The simple gold band he had given her when he had nothing else to give. "I don't miss the cave," he whispered, "but I am grateful for the dark." "Why?" "Because," he said, pulling her hand to his chest, right over his heart. "It was the only place where I could see you clearly." Georgiana leaned her head on his shoulder. The storm raged outside, trying to get in, but the walls held firm. The fire snapped. The world was cold and loud and demanding, but in here, they were safe. They weren't the Duke and the Duchess. They were just two people who had found each other in the shadows and promised never to let go of the light. And they never did.
I was found where the cold kept my name, where the fire had forgotten my face.
No crown, no path, no claim, only breath and an empty place.
You did not ask who I had been. Did not weigh my worth or cost. You saw a man worn thin
and held the soul the world had lost. I knew you before you spoke a word. I felt you before you turned your head. Some hearts are quietly hurt, even when the world says they are dead.
I did not need your past.
I did not need your proof.
I only knew this truth,
that love was standing in front of me.
I had nothing but silence.
You answered with light. I had no tomorrow. You stayed through the night.
In the gamer's cottage,
where the world grows still,
where the snow listens
and the stars hold still,
I would love you nameless,
I would love you poor, I would love you forever and forevermore.
They speak of power like it makes a man.
They count a life in land and gold,
But I was shaped by your open hand.
by mercy, quiet, brave and bold.
I would sleep on the floor,
If it kept you warm,
I would walk with no name to claim.
storm or calm, dust or throne, my love for you would stay the same. If the world should call you nothing, if the world should turn away, I will stand where I first found you and love you just the same. You are not what you were given.
You are not what you lost.
You are the man who chose to stay no matter the cost.
In the gamer's cottage,
With the door shut tight,
I am
yours in the dark, I am yours in the light.
No title could change what my heart already knows.
I am yours when the river freezes,
I am yours
when it flows. You saved me without asking. You believed without proof.
If I am worthy of anything, it is because I was loved by you.
Loved by
Let's go
where the heart learns peace
beneath the snow.